Hello, this is Eva from Namibia. I am a member of One Africa, championing blue economy. I have a business called Zadiva Fishery Products. So my company supply seafood to hotels, restaurants, and supermarkets. But due to the impact of COVID on the hotelier industry, I have lost 80% of my income and I have to close down my operation for the month of April. Now, in the meanwhile, I have decided to re-strategize my business model and diversify into offering fishery products to end user consumers in and around Windhoek. And secondly, I have also intensified our online presence. So with this, we have really gained momentum in gaining new clients. So we are negotiating with 10 clients in rural areas who want us to supply them with fishery products. This will be good for us. However, we are still sorting out the transportation issues. As logistics has been disrupted by COVID. And so at this point in time, I would like to urge government and funding institutions to support us with financial means in order for us to maintain our businesses and maintain our cash flows and be able to survive during this period of COVID. I thank you.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, excellencies. Welcome to the first roundtable thematic discussion, harnessing the potential of women-led entrepreneurship, self-employment, and value chain development. I am Cecilia Ugas Estrada, Special Advisor, Corporate Management and Operations Directorate here at UNIDO. It is a great pleasure and honor to be the moderator of this roundtable discussion. We have already seen a video, as a motivational statement in order to start our discussions, but I would really like first now to give the floor to Mrs. Asa Shalabi, who is from the Ministry of Trade and Industry of Egypt, who will be delivering special remarks to start with our conversation. Mrs. Shalabi, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Ms. Celia. My name is Az Shalabi. I am going to speak on behalf of Her Excellency, the Minister of Trade and Industry in Egypt, and also speaking was on behalf of my organization, Micro, Small and Medium Enterprises Development Agency. I'm the head of the gender unit and the agency. I have reading the background paper made by UNIDO, and I'm not going to take long from you because I'm just in for the session and the roundtable. But regarding what I see in the video also, I'm going to have some remarks about it because we recently we have a questionnaire joined by ILO and National Council for Women in Egypt, trying to discover what happened for women during the COVID-19 crisis. And what from here, I think the entrepreneur in everywhere worldwide will having the same problems since we have for the first draft for us, it's about 79 from our questionnaire saying that they lose a lot of income, and some of them is closing all the activities. Some of them trying to success by adding a new line for production so they can be able to survive and during the crisis. First, I will talk about my organization. My organization is having lately the gender UNDP seal for equality. So we're trying to working with gender equality during all our activities, enterprise or BDS or else. Also, we try to make some kind of access to information since I discovered that this was a problem for having the value chain, international value chain, how women can access to it. So we have a lot of things trying to provide the information. We have our own hub for mass media, micro, small, and medium enterprises, and also We have hosting the COMESA project 50 million women speak hub. We are the hosting for Egypt and trying to make all kind of facilitation of information for about 38 countries in Africa and Egypt also, so we can be able to make B2B or try to work on the raw materials and information on the enterprises in Africa. In Egypt also, we host the hub for all the MSMEs in Egypt, trying to put it online with all the stakeholders needed for women and information. The portfolio of women in Mesmeda is 46% for women. We try to making it 50-50 in our working, and also for the BTS we have a lot of things developing for women. We have one-stop shop for making all kind of registration needed for the enterprises. We have marketing even in the local market or outside. We try to enter what kind of any kind of exhibition we can cover the woman to deliver her goods and enterprises there. We also have the financial scheme. As we have in the enterprise, we have small, medium, and micro. I think the micro is the one who are suffering a lot since it under the umbrella of the informal sector. We try now to, through our new law, we have a new law going to be launched next month after we have the parliament acceptance of the law. We have a lot of benefits for the informal sector, so they can be able to join the formal sector and be covered with a lot of benefits. And I think the woman is the one who going to have a lot of benefits if she joins a formal market, so she can be able to make her own goods or enterprise go worldwide or in the international market. Also, we work on the value chain. Since we have a lesson learned working on value chain for women, we having with UN Women One Village, One Product project, and we try to cover 4 sectors in the value chain women working in. And also with the African Development Bank, we make some project called Organic Cluster, and also it was depending on the value chain. And we, during this project, we gain to have the cluster map, and we have about 45% of the clusters, and it's covered by women. Even it's all the value chain is women, or she is a very important part from the industry itself. This all help us for working along with the portfolio of women. I'm not going to talk so much because I try to give the floor for others, and I'm be here for any kind of question or other information for the data you need for Egypt or for my organization, so I can be able to develop it during the discussion. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Salabi. And it's really very important to know what the government of Egypt is at the moment doing in order to support the effort of women, Egyptian women entrepreneurs. And I think public policy, of course, is a very, very important topic that we will be discussing throughout this session during the roundtable discussion. Thank you very much. One of the most important dimensions of globalization in the turn of the century has been the expansion of global value chains. The value chains can be a major engine of productivity growth with significant technology spillovers, and while increasing trade and access to markets, global value chains can also contribute to poverty reduction. Access to global value chains can function as a catalyst for women economic and social empowerment, be it as workers, managers, or entrepreneurs. However, the extent to which women can grasp these potential benefits is not automatic. 3 facts are very important to keep in mind. First, women constitute 39% of the workers in the manufacturing sector globally, but women are overrepresented in low-wage, semi-skilled, often precarious positions. especially in labor-intensive sectors such as textile, apparel, leather, and footwear industries, and the horticultural sector, of course. Nevertheless, when it comes to the top executive level, the proportion of women remains below 20%. In addition, past developments show that when production becomes more capital intensive and wages increase, women employment in the sector increases. Second, when it comes to business and entrepreneurship globally, women own more than 30% of registered businesses. However, women entrepreneurs are also more likely to be in the informal sector, and women businesses tend to be smaller, operate in sectors with low profit margins, and have less access to financial products and services. Third, women's leadership decision-making and participation in policy-making, collective bargaining, and business networking does not match their importance for the economy and society. A UNIDO flagship initiative promoting women's economic empowerment in the MENA region shows that due to deeply rooted gender discriminatory social norms and practices, women are disadvantaged compared to men in accessing opportunities to network and share knowledge, and to engage with policymakers to address specific barriers that constrain women's entrepreneurship. As a result, much of women entrepreneurship and innovative potential remains untapped. The manufacturing sector was among the hardest hit by the COVID-19 outbreak and the ensuing containment measures. The decrease in manufacturing value added during the first quarter of 2020 equals already the decrease experienced during the month that followed the 2008 financial crisis. So the recession is severe and unfolding. Within the framework of the same flagship initiative, UNIDO conducted a survey to assess the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic on women and youth entrepreneurs in manufacturing and service related to manufacturing sectors. Respondents originated from 34 countries, mostly in Africa and the Middle East. Market losses, liquidity shortages, and supply difficulties appear to be the major COVID-19 related challenges across the whole sample of respondents. Nevertheless, for women and youth-led businesses, the challenges are even more severe. These findings seem to confirm that women and youth-led businesses are less resilient against the crisis. In the context of the COVID-19 pandemic and beyond, this roundtable will offer an opportunity to examine the challenges and opportunities for women to move up in the value chain and for integrating a gender-responsive approach in value chain development. It will also review policy avenues to boost gender balance and women entrepreneurial potential. Please allow me to use this opportunity to extend our gratitude to the Italian government for the continuous and generous support provided since 2015 to the mentioned flagship initiative promoting women's economic empowerment in the MENA region. The findings of this project prepared the ground for the organization of this conference. In 2018, the project entered the second phase, and this time it also benefits from the collaboration of the FIO and the UN Women. In order to discuss and shed further light into these issues, we have a very distinguished panelists and that have kindly accepted to participate in this roundtable discussion. Please let me introduce them to you. Mrs. Caroline Maher. Caroline is the youngest member of the Egyptian parliament. She's a multifaceted person with a degree in journalism and human resource management. She's also well-known as sportswoman, winner of international competitions in the discipline of Taekwondo. Thank you very much for being here.
Thank you, it's my pleasure. So thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be on this panel with all such amazing speakers. So while talking about the good practices that exist to increase women participation in the global value chain, I wanted to discuss this talking on two levels. So I'm going to talk about good practices for multilateral organizations and for multinational organizations as well. So many corporations in developed countries, you will find them engaging women-owned businesses in their supply chain as part of their CSR or overall business strategy. However, a lot more focus is needed. And that is because a study by the UN Women stated that although corporations spend trillions of dollars acquiring goods and services, women-owned businesses' share is only 1%. So can you imagine? I mean, this is a very, very low percentage. So to do more practices and to do better practices, companies need to exert a lot of effort. Because as well, another study by McKinsey stated that corporations that overlook the role of of women-owned businesses, they are losing a lot, because companies who are doing so, they are earning better ROI and better profitability. So I wanted to share some good examples. So one example is Walmart. So Walmart, this was, I mean, longer ago, it's not a recent example, but I really like the example. So Walmart, as part of their procurement strategy, they were committed to spend $20 billion from women-owned businesses in the US and to double their shares from other women-owned businesses in other countries. And also, in the shops themselves, they created the logo, and the logo allowed people to know that this is from a woman-owned business. This product is from women-owned businesses. So I think this example was very successful, and it also allowed women's integration in their supply chain. Another example is a company called Sudoku. This company is based in Paris. They have 400,000 employees, and they serve customers in 80 different countries. So this company, they had a new inclusion program committed to spending $1 billion sourcing from different SMEs, and 1,500 of those SMEs were women-owned. So I think those two examples are very good. Another example is regarding the multilateral organizations. So this is my last example. It's the UN Women's Manual. It's called The Power of Procurement, How to Source from Women-Owned Businesses. I really think that advise you all, whoever doesn't know about it, to review it, because it's very, very effective. This manual was developed with input from different stakeholders. We had the government, we had the civil society, and we had different corporations, the largest available, and also we have the civil society. So they came up with this manual, and this manual acts as a corporate guide for different multilateral and multinational organizations on how to integrate women-owned businesses in their procurement policies. The guide gives you also, it provides you with different tools and techniques. And the objective is to eliminate the barriers and the challenges that prevents women access and full participation in the global value chain. So I think that those three examples, if they're imitated elsewhere, they can have a very positive impact. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Caroline, for your intervention. I was told that I need to speak a bit louder. Apparently, my voice doesn't come up very, very clearly. But let's continue with this conversation. I mean, talking about which good practices exist to increase the participation of women-owned businesses in GBCs. And for this purpose, let me also introduce you to Beatriz Gacuba, and she's Executive Director of the African Women Agribusiness Network, a nonprofit organization focused on providing women-owned agribusiness access to sustainable markets, trade information, innovative financing solutions, and technologies. Beatriz, what do you have to share with us? I don't know if she's online.
I think she just needs to unmute herself.
Ah, okay.
Unmute. Thank you, Cecilia, and thank you.
I thought you were not there.
Thank you, Cecilia, and as I was saying earlier to my colleagues, that this is a really a timely conference, and we had all the previous speakers when at the launch. I think this is really there was a lot of information and support from all of us, and we hope that after this session and this conference, we're really going seriously to link our intentions to our actions. So when it comes to, when I take up where Caroline left it on the access to market and value chains, I think we are basically a network that supports women in owned businesses and led businesses, in agriculture, in agribusiness. So we support our members through the value chains. So how do we go about it? As you know, what has been a very challenging is the past years to help women is because we have to know where they are, what they are doing, and how they're doing it. So the first thing we do at One Africa is that we created a platform, a digital platform for each category and each value chain by country and by region on the continent. So we have we work with 1,600 businesses in 42 countries. So we have champions in 42 countries. They are all registered businesses and they are MSMEs. Of course, macro businesses are not registered, they're informal, but what is important here to say is that they are part of the value chain, because the medium and the small, the uptake for those micro women. So the value chain, we have to look at it also. How do we improve the value chain? How do we formalize? How do we graduate those micro to be able to increase their volume? I think we'll come back to, there are a lot of questions that I will be able to talk about that. So our experience in the value chain is that that's where it starts, and that's where at the basis where we have to start, because the small takes from micro, and the medium from small, and the large business. In our network, we have medium, small, micro, and large. We have exporters. We have women who are exporting a lot, you know, within the regional markets and the continental market and the global market. So what is very important here, as here what everyone said from the beginning, we are hopeful that we're going to be able to mobilize a lot of resources to train and empower women in knowledge in all those value chains, because the problem is not the market, is how you enter the market, how ready, the preparedness of those women. We have an eHub, which is a repository of information on market and standards, quality assurance, information on buyers and sellers, and input and service provider. But believe me, if you are a woman in rural Africa, the continent where I come from and where I operate from, and you are in business, if you have consistently being denied access to any knowledge of access to finance, access to knowledge in how do you access market, what are the standards, how do you trade in this regional block, how do you certify to be able to export from one country to another, and leave alone from one continent to another, we have excluded 70% of those women. So I think when, as I say, when when we will decide to link our intentions to our actions, I think that's how we're going to do the evaluation. I think we all know the status of the women, we all know what is required, and I think this is a platform is really, really very important, because it sounds like we are all ready for action to put the resources where it is. Without training, without skills upgrade in each value chain. You heard our young woman from Namibia who's in the blue economy, actually she trades in oyster. She has an MBA in oysters, and she has an MBA in business management. Now you can imagine the woman in the rural area who doesn't even have a high school education. If she wants to graduate from one business to another, from one value, even along the value chain of their product, is very challenging. So we really have to invest and put resources in value chains. That's the only way that we're going to grow the sector. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Beatriz. And now let me turn to Mrs. Charlene Bouilly-Lusamba. She's the lead technical officer of the Women Entrepreneurship Development Program of the ILO. She works on the entrepreneurship graduation and business upgrading models to empower women entrepreneurs in value chains. Charlene, do you have something to add, please?
Yeah, so thank you very much, Cecilia, for passing on me. And then to add to like already very rich inputs or insight provided by Caroline and Beatrice, I'm going to focus more on the approach that the ILO is using to empower women entrepreneurs in specific value chains, being local and also cross-border or global value chains. We are using a model, business upgrading model to do that. And this is something that is happening at 3 steps. And we are using a very holistic and systemic approach with relevant tools at the policy level to see to what extent we can also devise policy changes in favor of women entrepreneurs so that they can work very efficiently along the value chains, and also at the meso level, so the market level, to empower market actors to deliver proper services, financial and non-financial, to women entrepreneurs. And also at the enterprise level, looking at the women entrepreneurs themselves and also their businesses on how they can increase their productivity and their competitiveness in order for them to also be upgraded to a certain level in the value chain, and also to take the power, you know, in the governance of the value chain. So how do we do that? So first of all, we apply a very, I don't know if I can say unique, but we are testing this model now of looking always at two value chains. So we look at value chains that are at sectors that are dominated by female or women entrepreneurs, and also at value chains that are not very well invested by women entrepreneurs, but which also generate a lot of wealth in the economy. And then we see in these two value chains, so in the female-dominated value chain, what are the factors that attract and retain women in those value chains, even if they are very saturated? And then in this growth-oriented value chain, to see what are the factors that create value. And then during the analysis, we see to what extent we can export factors that retain women in like a saturated value chains into this growth-oriented value chain, and vice versa. And then we come up with some recommendations on how women can be present in both value chains, noting also that all the economic sectors are beneficial for the economy. Look at what we are having now with COVID-19, for instance. We see that when we have a focus, or when we have lots of women in just one sector, when a crisis hits like a COVID, you know, we can also have a lot of negative effect on women because of lack of diversity of their economic activity. So this is also a way looking forward to avoid this kind of specific negative effects, focusing on only one sector. And then we talk to women about, we do a kind of mapping of the value chain. So we tell them where their businesses are located. And then when the good things in the value chains are happening, how they can take the power and also influence the governance and the functioning of the value chain. And above all, being the ILO, how they can generate employment at three fronts. So in their businesses themselves, so how they can generate better working conditions for themselves, and also for people that are working with them, looking mostly on social protection schemes, and how they can also generate indirect employment by supplying to like big companies or other companies in the chain, but also from buying from other women entrepreneurs in the value chain, so that they create also a kind of very vibrant dynamic. And then to what extent they can also generate induced jobs by empowering women who are working with them, but also other women entrepreneurs they are buying from, to generate a kind of a very dynamic economic scheme. So this is at the second step. And then the third step, once they know about how they can function in the value chain and how they can influence the governance of the value chain, we also introduce them to like available business development services, and how now we are talking about non-financial, so how they can manage their businesses, but how they can also manage their growth, because they have to grow, and sometimes growth also means like a collapse, because sometimes when you do not manage the growth properly, so the business just collapses. So how they can manage the growth, and how they can also increase their agency, so the ability for them to look at economic opportunities available to them, but to also take ownership and then to act on those economic opportunities. And the other thing is also access to finance, because for them to access market, they also need to access finance. And when we talk about finance, let's talk about capital in general, like social capital as well. So how they can build their own networks and then be able to really influence the market, this kind of thing. They can access like traditional financing, but also non-traditional financing, like impact investment schemes and this kind of things. And then the last thing, it's about visibility, voice, and representation. Because we are talking about value chain and global value chains, which means also like a trade agreement. How can they come together and raise their voice and also be present, sit in negotiation about trade agreements between their countries and other countries and things like this. So how they can really raise their voice and representations in specific sectors or in specific region of the country, so that they are really well integrated in the global supply chain, not only as like very minor actors, but very influential actors, and then have their word to say, and they are influencing the global economy. So this is what we do with this business upgrading model for women entrepreneurs. And this is targeting most of the time growth-oriented women entrepreneurs, and also businesses that are already formal, or at least in the way to get formal. So when they are not formal, we also help them to get formal, so that they can really play a relevant role in the local and the global economy.
Great. Thank you very, very much, Charlene. I think it's very interesting to see the methodology that the ILO is actually applying. And in particular, I mean, how to protect really women entrepreneurs from being victims of their own success, right? I think it's a very, very interesting angle that you are really presenting in this conversation. But, you know, let me press a little bit more, you know, how can women be supported in accessing markets at the national and international level? In particular, you know, I think it's very important to refer to new technologies, yeah? For instance, platforms, e-commerce. Can this really be a successful path for promoting women's access to the market? Caroline, would you like to tell us something about this?
Oh, yes, sure. So thank you for giving me the floor again. I believe that a lot can be done to support women in accessing markets. And regarding talking about the use of technology and of platforms, I think it has a positive impact. However, we should still consider that there's a gender divide in terms of access to technology, because research has shown that in poor cities, women have 50% less likelihood to have access to the internet. So we need to bear in mind how to support women in being more literate in terms of access to technology and in using technology. So I think this should be tackled at first. However, new technologies offer a lot of possibilities because they allow remote work, which opens a new world of possibilities, like our conference today, because we all have the COVID and still we're having this conference and we have around 200 attendees. So it makes things really easy. New technology also provide instant market information like prices and different access to data, as well as access to donor support and multilingual trainings that are found online, especially during our time now. Networking opportunities, the ability to sell online. So I think that technology, of course, has a positive impact. However, there's a lot more that should be done. So for example, I'll talk from my expertise, I'll talk about the gender mainstreaming. So talking about gender mainstreaming, and just as Ms. Azza Sharbi was saying, we have a new laws for SMEs that's being next month is going to be starting. I think that this is going to have a very, very positive impact on micro and on very small enterprises. And I think it's going to have better and easier access to the market, especially for the informal sector. So the legalization and the gender mainstreaming has a very critical and pivotal role. Other ideas of roles and things that can be done is roles that ensure equal pay. We don't have this problem in Egypt, thankfully. We don't have the problem in equal pay. However, worldwide, there's a gender gap of 23%, which is not a low percentage. Another thing is laws that combat sexual harassment. So the UN had a study, and the study surveyed 140 countries. 59 of them did not have any law to protect women against sexual harassment. So this is not, I mean, it's a big number. Also, there's a lot of laws that exist in 104 out of 140 countries that were surveyed. They have laws that eradicate and prevent women from participating in certain jobs or working at certain times throughout the day. So I think this also prevents women participation in the market in some sectors. Another thing is monitoring and availing care services. So for example, in Egypt by law, so any company in the private sector or the public that have 50 or more female employees, they should avail a child care facility for children up to the age of 6, and the woman only contributes 5% of her salary for the first kid, and if she had 2 kids at the same time, so she pays 4% for the second. So I think monitoring and availing child services would make women's life easier and will give them more access to different markets and to different sectors. So that's regarding the gender mainstreaming. Talking about capacity building projects and CSR projects, I think this is really, really important because women need to develop their ability to deploy existing resources and to enter markets and to improve their bargaining power. So for example, in Egypt, we have the National Council for Women. They have a lot of collaborations and a lot of projects that tackle this area and that help women entrepreneurs, and they support them like sort of incubators. This is really important because women did not have, some women, especially in the most vulnerable, they do not have the equal opportunities that were provided to other people and to their men counterparts. So I think this is very important. So I'm going to wrap up because of the time. Also, advocacy and awareness. I think this is really important. So we need to have cultural advocacy and awareness regarding the penalization of women for maternity leaves. And this, in general, is something that we find women bearing all the responsibility or most of the responsibility in most countries, as well as the domestic work. So we need to raise awareness that sometimes you'll find men and women both working, but still she's doing most of the work at home. So this is something that needs more awareness and advocacy. And last, equal financial opportunities. This is very important because for women entrepreneurs specifically to start their own business, they need to have access and they need to have knowledge and they need to have financial literacy, and they need also, we need to have different funding ideas because women, especially in rural and poor areas, they have less access to assets. Sometimes they are not allowed to own land due to cultural or religious beliefs. So this sometimes affects their ability to get funds to start their own business. So ideas like alternative collaterals, like group-based approaches and group-based funding can be something that would work well. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Caroline, and thank you also for bringing to this table the whole issue of the normative framework, in particular our law systems, right? That we definitely need to keep working on that in order to be able to fill in the gaps that sometimes exist in order to be able to empower better women. You know? I would just like to maybe to ask Beatriz, because you mentioned already, you know, the whole issue. The problem is that it's not that markets are not there; markets are there. The problem is how to access them. And in particular, if you have anything to share with us in respect of the role of new technology, Beatriz. You are muted, I think.
Okay, thank you, Cecilia. Yes, I think, you know, I joined, of course, what Caroline just said, but I think technology is going to be the game changer. Yeah, if you really want to, we have seen that we just conducted a rapid assessment of impact of COVID on the businesses, and we had 200 respondents from 29 African countries, and of course, what the results showed, the already existing gaps, you know, in anything we do for women, in terms of businesses, in terms of also technology and the digitalization. And the technology is the last on the list of all the challenges that we have in making successful women business entrepreneurship. If you, of course, we've been talking about access to finance for I don't know how many years. Is still a challenge because we have not come up with flexible access to loans for women who don't have collateral, etc., and all the issue of land that we are not going to discuss here because those are all the issues. And we hoped that technology was going to be a game changer, but we noticed that our results showed that only 4% of the 200 could adapt to go online and selling their product online. One, of course, because of the illiteracy of everything. To be able to sell online, you really have to know, to have access to technology, to the knowledge of the new technology, how to go on the website and create your own, market your own products. That requires knowledge, and you have to be trained on that. And of course, it was not surprising that most of 90% of those 4.4% who adapted e-marketing and digital trading were young people, and they're 35 years old. And we all know that the average farmer, at least in our sector of agriculture, which is 70% of rural Africa anyway, it's 60 years old. So we are not, so 50% of those people, I mean, more than 60% are going to be excluded. So it is, technology is the way, as everyone is saying, but how do we prepare them? How do we prepare all those people to adapt to this new technology? It's with training. We have online, we conduct online and offline activities, training material, but for us, you can imagine we'll have to develop new training materials to adapt to this situation we are in now. That's the challenge we have in this COVID and the post-COVID, because things are going to be, are not going to be as normal. It's completely, without a box. We don't know how it's going to be, but what we know that the survivors are the one who's going to quickly adapt to technology. Yeah, because we have seen that those who are selling door to door and using their WhatsApp groups, and they are the ones who survive to stay afloat. But we should remember that more than 60% are not likely to have access to that knowledge to be able to adapt. So here, the call is, how do we now re-engineer our thinking in addressing aid? And the intention is saying, are we, the donors and the government, saying, how much are we going to invest in the training, in this development of new training materials, and doing the incubator to incubate those young people who are looking for jobs, because we know also, we see more and more coming into agribusiness, because that's the only sector that can really offer, because they go home, they go on 1 acre of land that their parents have, instead of sitting in town with a university degree. Now with COVID, with no money even from the parents, they have to go home and see the land. How they go in there, they need training. How do we change and adapt without resources? And with women is even worse, because we have seen that because of the lack of adaptation, I'll come back to it when we talk about COVID later, but everything is linked. A lot of women have lost, 91% have lost their income, and only a few of them have kept it. And those who have kept it, actually, most of them were not married. And those who were married, they had to stay home, so because to take care of the children and the domestic work, and so they lost their businesses, 50% of their income, because of that time that they need, because of a pandemic, they need to reallocate. So this is challenging. I think in the launching session they were talking about how we were losing the gains of what we have made and economic empowerment. And it's really visible. I mean, from our study, you can see that even that domestic violence has increased in many households, because of that lack of cash disposable that the woman was bringing for small and small businesses. And for the medium businesses, it's really, they are sitting there with loans and everything. So the technology, the access to flexible finance, the access to market is going to be very challenging for us. That's why we're going to focus. We will have to focus our training and our attention to allocate more resources to that. When it comes to markets, we have seen that when the lockdowns occurred in many countries, the only market they had It was the local market. And anyway, most of them can only trade in their own local market, because to be able to trade in regional markets or continental markets, you need, each market has its own rules. And this is what the women are lacking, the knowledge about those rules. The only place they had was the local market. And the local markets, because of the lockdowns, they could not access the local market. So the macro suffered a lot. Those the women, you know, who are moving around selling door to door, the macro women in those in our urban areas lost completely their income. In our women on blue economy who are just grilling fish at the end of the day for the passer to come by, who have been able to earn a living for them and their families, they lost all the income for 3 months. You can imagine in which state they are in and their families. And SMEs, the same thing, because who is going to recapitalize them? So which market? There was no access. We realized that those macro and small ones who are trading in the local market, but as street vendors and small market vendors, their life stopped for 3 months. We don't even know in next month where they're going to be. And we can imagine them and their families, and they have already fallen into the poverty line. And how do we assist them? How do we, how do we mobilize resources to put them back into resilience without recapitalizing them or giving them flexible loans? It's not gonna happen. Resilience, you're resilient because somebody has given you a push to go back to where you are. Yeah. So I think when we talk about markets in this COVID pandemic, we have to think about these markets. What we have learned is that those street markets and those markets, you know, women who sell markets in 70% of rural areas, that's the only place they can sell their markets. Once they were locked down, they lost their income. So we are speaking, we don't even know how many of them and their victims they made. So the call here is for those that we have their numbers, so we have at least 350,000 contacts with them, how do you go back to them with training? No, they need capital, they need finance. Market is already there. We know how are we going to rethink the market. So here, the actions will speak for themselves. It's no longer, you know, it's no longer business as usual. We have really, those women have fallen into poverty line. And before COVID, 3 months ago, they were going concern. They had businesses, they were feeding their families, they were paying their school fees. So we don't know what is going to happen. We don't even, as we speak now, 50% of them have already closed their business, lost their business. Stop.
Very much, Beatrice. I think this is very insightful, and we will get a chance to talk a bit more about this during the COVID discussion in the second part of this roundtable. Let me now refer to the situation of women in rural areas and those working in the informal sector. One of the main concerns is how can we strengthen the gender sensitivity of local food value chains and facilitate access to technologies and business development services for this kind of women entrepreneurs. So for this question, I would really like to invite Mrs. Clara Millumpan. Clara is the Regional Gender Officer with the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations Office for North Africa and the Near East. She has been with the UN for more than 10 years. And prior to moving to Cairo, where she's based now, she was with the FIO Regional Office for Asia and the Pacific. Clara, can you please give us some insights into this?
Thank you, Cecilia. I feel that a lot has been said already, actually, and I don't want to repeat what has been already addressed by Beatrice, highlighting the specific challenges that rural women face. To put things a bit more in context, I would also like to maybe start by highlighting that while we are talking about some specific value chains in the agro-food sector that are increasingly export-oriented, traditional value chains are still the norm. In the MENA region, small-scale systems still provide over 80% of the region's agricultural output. And 85% of holdings in the agricultural sector are managed by families. And this is not to say that they don't contribute. Actually, they give a good, very important contribution to countries' GDPs and employment creation, going from 19 to 27% in countries like Egypt, Jordan, Morocco, and Tunisia. But this is also to kind of bring the discussion a bit more to reality. So many of the issues that we heard that rural women face are linked to, as also previous speakers have highlighted, to very deeply rooted also discriminatory social norms, social cultural norms. And this is why we need to be acting at different levels. So intervention to give women better access to technologies, to services, capacitating them are very important, but they need to go hand in hand with more transformative approaches that are sustainable and are impactful in the long run. So this is what also FAO is doing, because we have realized that approaches that focus, for instance, on a single constraint, on a single aspect, are short-lived in terms of real women's economic empowerment. So we are promoting an integrated approach where different measures and address several constraints at the same time, but also the intervention that are targeting different levels. So the individual and the household community level, as well as the institutional level, because as we mentioned, policies and strategies are also very important. They have a very important role to play. And this is why we work with our government counterparts to make sure that gender concerns, gender analysis are really integrated in sectoral strategies about agriculture, about food, but also at a bigger scale, trade policies, no? Because sometimes we talk about gender at the very micro level without remembering that the whole political economy of, in my case, I'm talking about the food systems, has an impact on how gender inequalities are exacerbated, perpetuated. So we really need to be working at different levels simultaneously. So removing these obstacles is the first step to ensure that women can benefit from participation in value chains, and especially in new opportunities. I think the COVID pandemic has really cracked open the unsustainability of business as usual. It's been a strong reminder to all of us in different sectors, including the agriculture sector, that business as usual is no longer viable. So we need to come up with new modes of production that are more sustainable, environmentally respectful, and new business models that are more inclusive. And this is to live up to the promise that we said we would reach sustainable development without leaving anyone behind. So we also see that when new business model, new opportunities arise, the risk is that women are left behind, women are marginalized. This is because, as Cecilia, Beatrice, all the speakers have pointed out, women, to begin with, they're starting from a disadvantage point. So we're talking about the role of innovation, of technologies, but we forget that most women, in rural areas, they may not be literate at all. They may not have access to mobile phones. They may not have access to internet or smartphone, let alone smartphone. And sometimes also we forget the power relations that are at play at different levels. So who has control over what tools? Who has control over what information? So I think it's important to come up with culturally sensitive strategies that can help women operate and own their enterprises, their businesses, recognize themselves as producers in their own right, because sometimes culture also is a play where women see themselves as helping the husbands, an extension of the domestic work, which is not. So they need to be recognized as producers, as entrepreneurs, as processors in their own right. So they have to own their means of production. So the importance of giving them equal access to land or water in our region specifically, and access to market and technologies and trainings that can help build their capacity, the literacy, financial, digital literacy. This seems like a huge challenge, but I think we are really at a turning point where we need to be stepping up the game by working together, bringing together different expertise, different sectors, and the private sector also has a responsibility and a role to play. Civil society is important because we want women at the forefront of this change. We want to hear from women to be empowered to have a say. So for instance, COVID response need to put women's needs and voices at the center because we cannot be deciding for them. So they have to be the ones deciding for themselves. So the importance also of voice and empowerment and leadership, because we've also recently conducted a study when I was still in the Asia region about women transformative leadership. When women are leaders, there's a better chance that they will also empower other women. They will be mindful of helping other women succeed. And we had an example of an agricultural cooperative set up in Mongolia by one young woman who, as the friend from Namibia was, she had the luck to be educated, but she went back to her rural community to help build a cooperative and help rural women in her community come together as a group. And this has had an enormous empowering impact. I can also cite other examples. For instance, very briefly, in Tunisia, we had a project working in the clam sector. Clam collectors are typically largely women who are also marginalized and not recognized in their roles. We have more than 4,000 women's collectors. So what the project did, it organized them in a group and it liaised them with an importer and with a company that would also ensure the quality of the produce so that it could be certified for export. And lately, it also created a fair trade label so that these clams coming from Tunisia are clearly labeled as being of high standard, being gender sensitive because they include women. And this connection have also helped women to be empowered to bargain their prices vis-a-vis vis-a-vis the distributors. And finally, the project has also been able to push forward a change in the regulation to make the rules in the clam collection sector much more transparent in terms of fixing the prices, and obviously has had an enormous impact on women's self-confidence and let alone income. So this is just a small example to say that how to emphasize the importance of transformative and integrated approaches to, especially when it comes to rural women.
Thank you very, very much, Clara, for your examples and the insights I think emerging from the FIO programs. Large experience actually working with rural women, right? I think one of the we all recognize that women start, from a disadvantaged position. But my question is, what role does the capacity development of women associations and women entrepreneurs play in strengthening women-owned business access to GBC? And to start this discussion about capacity development, I would really like to invite to the floor to Mrs. Sara Roversi. She's the founder Ecosystems Director and Chief of Social Mission of Future Food Institute. Sarah is an experienced entrepreneur and thought leader that works on setting the agenda for the sustainable food industry. Sarah, would you like to share your insights about this topic?
Yes, thank you so much. Actually, a lot have been said before me, and I think that now we are facing for sure a very interesting time in history. We all are living the same ordeal, and we know the pain and the losses we are all having everywhere at different capacity, but anyway, we all are feeling almost the same tragic situation. But I'm always trying to look at the positive side of the different situation I'm facing. And of course, I think that education at every level has been one of the sectors that has been transformed, challenged the most in this period. We have seen that at the school level, but also in industry, building capacities in every part of the world. And now with the Future Food Institute and the FAO Academy, actually, we just started a very incredible experience that started last Monday. So I want to share that because this is really happening in these hours. And we had to turn all our boot camps that we were supposed to take place in 10 different countries in the world. We had to turn the entire experience into a digital experience. And it's pretty amazing what is happening, because if until a few months ago we could offer our trainings just for a small amount of people, now we have classrooms that are made by more than 50 people coming from any part of the world. And the interesting thing that we are noticing is that, of course, this no border situation is facilitating so much the interaction and the peer learning between people that comes from different cultural backgrounds. And this is pretty positive. If I'm thinking about the topic of capacity building, and I think about which are the issues we see and the challenges we face when we try to support women in business, I think that the problem when people have access to technology, the problem is not the lack of skills. The problem is not lack of competencies, because all women that comes to face a business are all very motivated, passionate, and they want to get to the point. They are straightforward. So this is not a problem of lack of knowledge. Sometimes the problem is a mindset issue. And I think that if we talk about capacity building, a lot is already accessible in terms of software, let's say, and the obstacle of the access to technology for sure it exists. I'm not saying that it doesn't exist, but if I'm thinking about FAO Learning Academy, it's an endless source of information and knowledge and courses, so you can know everything you need about agriculture, just if you want to take those trainings. But the self-paced training are not teaching you to work together, are not teaching you to approach the problems. We are not teaching you the prosperity thinking approach, are not teaching you design thinking, need finding, the way to collaborate with people. So this is something that I really feel that is the gap that we need to cover. So the mindset issue. And we are all focused on training women, but now we need to train men. We need to train men to be able to work with women, because sometimes women are there, but the working environment are not ready to deal with women. And I'm talking about that just only watching our company, our organization. We are a 6-year-old organization. And because many of our fellows, our researchers and so on are women, now we face a situation in which we are almost an 85% women company, and men struggle to interact with women that goes fast, are very acknowledged, and so on. So I think that now we need probably to reach gender equality, trying to invest time in finding learning experiences, and not saying education that is top down, but learning experience, meaning that we need to learn together at the same pace, finding what's the best way to work, creating the space for every kind of diversity. And for me, diversity means prosperity. Diversity is something that we need to preserve, that we need to highlight, because diversity is knowledge, diversity is crucial in every stage of our ecosystem, biodiversity, cultural diversity, diversity in the room. So this is something that we need to protect, but people is not able yet to create value out of diversity. And so I think that working in capacity building, at least at the Future Food Institute, this is actually what we are trying to do as much as we can, is really being focused on training the mindset, learning how to build prosperity, implementing regenerative business model, but overall, really training ourselves to work together, because the SDG 17 is the most important one. So we are a little bit learning how to work together, small one and big one, a little bit in the startup ecosystem is happening. But I think that we need to start to train ourselves to really balance and reach the equality. So not just being focused on getting skills, because we need to have also to develop the other side of the skills that are not technical skills or scientific skills, are human skills.
Okay, thank you very much. I think it's a very insightful message, and I think it's a pioneer in more or less, from what I understand, program that we are conducting in the Future for Food Institute, and it's very, very important that we are hearing, you know, from you about this experience. I would like to ask Charlene, maybe if she can add something, you know, from the perspective of the ILO. I mean, with these issues of capacity development and the way that we can strengthen women-owned business and access to GBC.
Yeah. So thank you, Cecilia, again. And to add to the dimension that Sarah just mentioned, and from the ILO perspective, you know that the ILO is a tripartite organization, and everything is like collective bargaining, voice and representation, this kind of thing. And something that we are working with women entrepreneurs on to just enable their participation in global value chains. It's also the capacity to advocate for like policy changes and reforms that can empower them and at some point help them increase the productivity and competitiveness of their businesses so that they can really integrate the value chains. I will give an example or two examples of our work with Women Chamber of Commerce in Tanzania and in Tunisia. For instance, we conducted an assessment of women entrepreneurship development in Tanzania back in 2016. And in this assessment, we look at framework conditions conducive to women's entrepreneurship development, looking at the regulatory framework, leadership in terms of coordination of all the actors in the country in terms of women's entrepreneurship development, and also access of women entrepreneurs to financial and non-financial business development services. We also look at the access of women entrepreneurs to markets and technology, as well as their voice and representation. So after the assessment was done, and then we had the result and the findings, one of the recommendations was that we need to really, or the country really needs to put like active policies to encourage women's participation in public procurement. That was an example. And then we worked with the Women Chamber of Commerce on the advocacy work to translate this recommendation in a very practical and concrete affirmative action so that women entrepreneurs can really have access to public procurement schemes that are put in place by the government. And then at the end of the process, and also this was not related to only the work done by the ILO, but the work done by the ILO also has influenced a lot the result in the end. The government ended up revising or amending the Procurement Act to integrate a target of 30% of public procurement going to women entrepreneurs and other specific groups like young people, disabled people, and also disabled people, and then aging population. So this is one of the results. And in Tunisia, we are also doing almost the same thing with the Tunisian Chamber of Commerce. So we work with them on like advocacy to reinforce their capacity on advocacy, and then collective bargaining to sit around the table of negotiations that public and private dialogue that really help them to put forward some I don't know how I can put it, so to put forward some arguments on how they can be empowered and how their businesses can really participate effectively to social and economic growth, so that we have an inclusive development where the potential of all the businesses being led by women or men or owned by women and men participate equally to social and economic development outcomes. So it's more on advocacy and also reinforcing their capacity on collective bargaining efforts, so that their voices are heard, and then not only heard, but also influence policy changes in favor of the empowerment of themselves, and also quicker participation of their businesses to social and economic growth.
Okay, thank you very, very much, Charlene. I think it's time for a break. I have promised the panel members that we will be giving like at least a 5-minute break, so we can sort of stand up, rest our eyes a little bit, and also maybe grab some coffee. But the only thing I would really ask you is not to go far, because this is going to be only for 2 minutes, and then we are going to restart this, the final minutes of this roundtable discussion with another video, another testimonial from one of the beneficiaries of the project. Okay, so thank you very much. I'll see you in 3 minutes. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. I'm going to take this opportunity to tell you a little bit more about the platform. First off, you are more than welcome to submit questions through the moderators. They will be looking at the questions and trying to answer them, provide material as they can. In the meantime, we also wanted to tell you that as part of the preparations for this conference, we really wanted to reach out to as many leading voices on women's economic empowerment as possible from across the globe. So we have really tried to establish an alliance of international organization leaders, members of the private sector, leading government representatives who have all expressed their incredible support and what they're doing in their own countries on women's economic empowerment. So if you want to have a look at those messages, we have created a gallery in the platform which contains all of these video messages, and we will draw attention to specific ones over the course of the conference. But really, it is all about this global movement that this conference is part of, and we would really welcome you to check those out. Thank you.
Beatrice, can we start with the video?
Bonjour, je suis Virginie Touré, épouse de Baglion, directrice générale de Certibio Guinée, gérante de la ferme de Dondoloré à Sanoya. Nous produisons des tomates, du piment, on va dire des légumes, et également des fruits. Nous transformons également des fruits en jus et championne à One Africa Guinée. J'ai décidé de parler de l'impact de la crise sanitaire Covid-19 sur nos activités. Avec la fermeture des frontières, nous n'avons pas pu exporter nos fruits. Il y a eu des différents barrages routiers à travers tout le pays, ce qui a fait que nous n'avons pas pu également ravitailler correctement les différents marchés et nos clients. Il y a eu le manque de main-d'œuvre, puisque il y a eu confinement, les ouvriers agricoles n'ont pas pu venir honorer leurs engagements. Et on sait tous que la fermeture des hôtels et des restaurants n'ont pas aidé non plus. Mais tout ça, figurez-vous, ont entraîné des conséquences très lourdes pour nous. Nous avons perdu 80% de nos revenus. Mais cette crise sanitaire, elle a quand même démontré que les agriculteurs et les agricultrices que nous sommes des piliers très importants de notre économie. Car malgré la crise, nous avons continué à nourrir les Guinéens. Donc aujourd'hui, sans agriculteurs, il n'y a pas de vie. Je m'adresse au chef de l'État, le professeur Alpha Condé. Il faudrait que, Monsieur le Président, vous puissiez nous venir en aide financièrement. Et maintenant, je lance un autre appel à tous les bailleurs de fonds et également aux organisations sous-régionales de soutenir les activités de One Africa. Je vous remercie.
Okay, I think this is great. I mean, it's such a motivational, is here really the experience, and we really know the hardship that many agribusiness entrepreneurs are facing, in particular women. So I think the example was really very, very striking. So let's continue with this conversation. I think there is something that we've been touching upon sort of in different replies to the different questions, and this is about the role of the private sector and the public leadership in fostering gender responsive corporate culture. So Sarah, would you like to give us some insights about this?
Yes, thank you. Thank you actually for all the sharings, because I'm learning so much and taking many notes thanks to all the insightful sharing that you are doing now. For sure, what I see is that the private sector is going sometimes faster than other situations. I see that the private sector is seeing a lot of value in facilitating the entrance of women in business because of many different aspects. But what we see is that at the general level, it's a very positive time, always in terms of behaviors and perspective, because in this moment in history where actually there is a huge lack in the global leaderships, and this is something that we perceive everywhere, we see that good business owners, trustful companies that are working well, companies that are truly trying to achieve the SDGs, the ones that are stepping up and building transparency, and the one that within these strategies are also, of course, trying to reach gender equality, are the ones that are not only pushing forward the big transformation we need, but they are becoming real role models. And they are sometimes filling the gap that we see in the global leadership. So I see that as a really positive aspect in this time. And if you check the trust barometer that have been published a few months ago, in the trust barometer, this is really emerging. Of course, if we think about what's the global issue we are facing, women, because of child that cannot go to school and because of many other issues that happens in every family around the world, now are facing challenges. But we see that business owners see the value in having women. And so the ones that are strategizing to reach gender equality then can have also more success in many other aspects of the business. So when we were talking before, someone was mentioning about the SDGs that sometimes were just part of the CSR. This is not just something that goes in the CSR strategies. What I see is that this is becoming a long-term business strategy. This is a business development strategy. So not just something that they're doing because it's good to do that. It's something that they do because they see value on having women around the table. And so I know that I always try to bring the positive aspect around the conversation, but I think it's interesting also sometimes to highlight the positive aspects and the role models, because we can take inspiration from them.
Yeah, great. No, thank you so much. I think it's really good to keep that spirit. Of course, I mean, we are in a conundrum that we really need a structural change in order for things start sort of turning a bit more in favor of women in order to establish a balance. But it's good to sort of be reminded that this is there are still some some room for maneuver, and of course good experiences happening in some places, and we need to know about that. So Caroline, would you like to share with us also some thoughts about this?
Yeah, so I just wanted to add to Sarah that I'm also learning a lot from everyone, and it's a pleasure to be on this panel. So let me start with the private sector. So talking about the private sector, in order to foster a corporate culture that is gender responsive, it's very important to have two things. Of course, the HR management, your HR management policies should be very clear and very strong, because it's an integral part of such a corporate culture, as well as having clear KPIs. And of course, you need to have the top management commitment, because if you don't have that, if they don't believe in their gender responsive role, then it's very difficult to get things through. And there's a lot of things that they can do. For example, we mentioned the gender sensitive procurement practices. They can start implementing it in order to have a positive effect, like having a supplier selection preference, code of conduct for their suppliers and distributors, and having purchasing policies that are gender sensitive. That is one aspect. Another thing is setting strict sexual harassment policies, because especially in sectors that were previously male dominated, women face a lot of harassment, of different kinds of harassment. So I think setting strict policies is going to make the corporate culture more successful. Creating awareness. So a lot of companies now have a lot of events, they organize events and they share information about gender issues and how it can have a positive impact on the business and on the GDP of the economy overall. And there's a lot of also of CSR projects that the company can join as well to support gender diversity. I think also providing flexible working arrangements like job sharing, like part-time jobs and remote working is very important, as well as smooth back to work programs for women returning from maternity. I think this is one of the most difficult phases that women go through. So a lot of companies are doing programs that are seeking this smooth transition back to work, and they can come back gradually with a part-time job. As I said, child care assistance, equal pay, and of course, recruitment and promotion policies are very, very important so that they have no gender bias. As for the public leadership, it's critical to ensure that there's gender-sensitive budgets, gender mainstreaming, and of course, female representation in decision-making positions. Because if you have females in decision-making positions, they can push for more gender diversity. For example, in the Egyptian parliament, we just had last year an amendment to the constitution. So we have, by law, 25% of the parliament now is going to be females. So this is going to be, this is next year in the new election, is going to be the highest number ever for Egypt. Also, a gender balance in the senior public sector post is something that is also very important. And finally, creating awareness about the gender-based discrimination is also a very important point to consider.
Great. Thank you very much, Caroline. I would like to ask Charlene. Charlene, do you have anything to comment on this issue, in particular from the ILO perspective, including labor standards, for instance?
Yes, so I would just add a few things on that, because when Caroline was talking, I was like, oh my God, maybe we prepare together. So I don't want to repeat what she already said. And I think that she covered a lot of things that are also like ILO related, like harassment and also maternity protection, these kind of things. So what I would like to add on this is looking at what also Sarah was saying previously on the whole ecosystem, not only focusing maybe on women or women-owned businesses, and looking at how companies can devise gender-responsive policies and practices, not only through women-owned businesses, but also at the gender-responsive enterprises. You know, you can also have a women-owned business, but which does not apply gender-responsive policies and practices in terms of recruitment, in terms of like social protection of the staff members, and so on and so forth. So it is also a way for us when looking at a gender-responsive procurement to see or to encourage buyers, corporate buyers or public buyers to also look at companies being women-owned, women-led, or just applying gender-responsive practices in terms of recruitment and also staff management, and to see to what extent they can encourage them and they can maybe buy from these companies, so that women along the chain, not only women who are receiving the contract, but women who are also benefiting from this good market dynamics, because the company is producing a lot, because the company is having some contract from big buyers from the government, so that they can continue to be operational, but at the same time, they generate some incomes from themselves, but they are also impacting positively in the life of people who are working with them, with spillovers to the social well-being of their staff members, being men or women, and also the well-being of the dependents of their staff members. So I will say that, so I'm complimenting what Caroline said already about all these practices. And I would like to mention the Convention 190 of the ILO about violence and harassment at the world of work. I think this is a very good instrument. Countries should also try to adopt, because it's also protecting women entrepreneurs and women workers in general along the value chains. So I think this is a good convention that should also be promoted. Yeah, and that's it. And when it comes to the government, again, this strategy of also having a specific target. I think Caroline also mentioned this previously with the US, with this 5% of public procurement going to women-owned businesses. You know, we have several examples on how they can also have a specific gender responsive procurement practices, because women entrepreneurs have suffered from a lot of injustice, you know. Even now, if we have like, so I'll just give an example. You've been in jail and then you are out, you did not go to school, you do not have like a proper network, and then we are saying, okay, so things are open, you can compete, but you will not have the same competencies or abilities to compete as people who have been outside and have built the network, have I don't know, have like the experience of doing this kind of thing. So women entrepreneurs at some point will also need some additional support to be able to compete on the same footing as men. It's not that we are favoring them because I don't want to be hired or I don't want to be granted a contract because I'm a woman, you know. We also have our own pride, but at least we need to acknowledge that women have suffered from a lot of injustice, and then we need to pull them up to a certain level to be able to compete at the same footing as men. So this is what I would like to add to what was already mentioned by my co-panelists. Thank you.
Thank you, Charlene. I think it's very important what you mentioned also in terms of the role of the international conventions, right? Because I think it's very interesting to see, you know, how these international conventions can really help local legislators, like, you know, it's the case of Caroline, in order to create the legal framework and the legal instruments at the national level. So it's a very interesting, I think, dynamic that I'm really happy that you both kind of brought it and made it sound very, very complementary. I would like actually now, since we are still a bit short, we are becoming a bit short of time, to maybe come back to the issue of COVID-19. But I would really like if you could sort of say, you know, very succinctly, you know, first on, you know, refer to the effects that I'm sure you all already have started studying on measuring them, the effects of COVID on women-led enterprises, but in particular, how to help these women to for their business to survive and to mitigate the effect of the value chain disruptions. I mean, the key word of all this discussion being, of course, resilience. Yeah. So, what kind of measures would support resilience among women entrepreneurs and workers? And let me turn to Clara, maybe to start replying to this question.
Thank you, Cecilia. I think a lot has been said on COVID already. I would like to maybe reflect back on the video that we saw at the beginning of this session. The data actually confirm what our friend was saying, that food production has remained at similar level to before COVID-19, thanks to our farmers, women and men. And global and local food availability and prices have remained stable, meaning that in general terms, vis-a-vis other sectors, the agricultural sector seems to have been, at least in this first phase, less impacted. Below this, let's say, surface, however, there's a world, and the disruption in value chains have had immediate and likely lasting impacts on business operations and value chain actors and incomes, especially women. We also heard from the video itself also emphasized some of the hurdles that women producers are going through at the moment. Or think about the other video where the woman, or was it Beatrice, was sharing the example of a woman who cannot go to the market while she is relying on the sale of her produce daily at the local market for her income. So, and we also know that women have been obviously bearing the big burden of their of reproductive work and care functions due to lockdown measures. But I think now is really the time to be thinking of, so what's next? How do you use this as an opportunity to transform our food systems to be more resilient, more sustainable, and to integrate better the need and concerns specific to women farmers, women producers, women value chains actors, and entrepreneurs. So the COVID pandemic has also shown some of the structural weaknesses of our systems, showing that, for instance, value chains are often lacking coordination along the chain itself, that the digital solutions and innovations are still very much untapped, underutilized. Also the inadequacy in storage and cold chain infrastructure that help produce remain viable and sellable or on the medium term. So there's a lot needs to be done also in terms of updating the business models. But this needs to be done in coordination with specific measures that support women producers, women entrepreneurs. So all the things that we've been discussing and that some of the panelists have also highlighted. So investing in women leadership, engaging them in the design of COVID response initiatives, building their collective action to be able to better negotiate their place and strengthen the linkages in value chains, both horizontally and vertically. Importantly, promoting women's resilience through better access to productive resources and finance. Finance is often not really, financial measures are not really targeting women who often don't have collateral. So how can we think of better products that have maybe innovative also forms of lending to women businesses and producers? And how can we create an enabling environment for investing in innovation that is really designed around women needs and targeting women. So innovation, we often come with innovation as a silver magic bullet, you know, as something that that everybody would be able to benefit from. But we learn from not only from the COVID lessons, but what we see on the ground that this is not the case. And the numbers that were mentioned earlier are striking. Not only 5% of those businesses in Cecilia's network were actually able to use new technologies. So how can we use this opportunity to rethink how we design technology and innovation, and how can we improve the literacy of women, the digital literacy, also building the infrastructure where it's not present, and how can we harness on the new generation to kind of build this gap and to be able to transition us to a more sustainable food system in the future. So we often look at different groups in kind of in silos. So we talk about women, we talk about youth, we talk about men. But some of the structural inequalities that we've seen also are reproduced themselves along generations. So lack of access to land, for instance, is one of the major impediments for young farmers to be productive on their farms, for young farmers to decide not to stay in farming. And this is contrary to the common belief that all young people in rural areas want to leave farming. If farming becomes productive and attractive, it can be productive and attractive for young people as well. And in this, we need to be also bridge the gender gap where we assume that young farmers are only men. This is not true. We know that there are many young women who are already working on the farms. Why not target them with specific initiatives that can help them be the agribusiness entrepreneur in the future? So I think the COVID lessons is really telling us that we need to be rethinking the way we do business in a global sense, and using this opportunity to think of more inclusive value chains, more gender responsive value chains, and also working together, including with different agents, amongst different agencies and among different actors, and importantly, empowering women to voice their concern, to have their voices heard.
Thank you very much, Clara. Beatriz, can I turn to you? Maybe you could just be very brief and mention to us what kind of measures do you think would be useful to support resilience among women entrepreneurs? And also let me take the opportunity to thank you because you very kindly shared the videos that have been really motivational for us. I mean, and thank also the members of your network for being so kind of allowing ourselves to have that material.
Cecilia, please, can you repeat the question because I think the network is not clear, yeah?
Yeah, no, it's basically if you would like to comment, you know, very briefly on the measures that would support resilience among women entrepreneurs in this COVID-19 framework situation.
Yeah. Okay, thank you very much. I think this is a wonderful panel because everyone has been complimenting one another, and this is exactly what everyone says. That's what we need to bring voice and agency to the women empowerment. And I think it's important that we also highlight that women empowerment comes with economic empowerment. We empower somebody in this world where we work within. We empower somebody with money, with income, and income can come from many sources. In our case, in One Africa, where we intentionally focus on women and youth in agribusiness, in business who are already registered and who are formal, we've seen that women, against all the challenges that have been enumerated even before post-COVID, they have taken the risk to go into businesses, and they were successful. But the COVID came to show the fragility that you know, of sustaining the growth of our business, because our institutions, and I like to come back to what Charlene said, and I think Charlene actually, that is our institution, our government, that they would have to be our voice, because we have everything. When I hear Charlene talk, it's something that we've known for many years, but how many really people in our government that are really are forcing what they have signed, even in protecting small businesses. We have stimulus packages now going on in many countries, but how much of it is going to those women? How are women protected? And I think if we add voice and if we all collaborate, it's something that will change. Another thing I want to say is that the private sector is very important. Myself, for those who know me a bit, I left the UN to go back home and start a business. So I've been an exporter of flowers, of roses from East Africa since 2004. And in February, in March, when COVID started, you know, we got our international contracts canceled. You know what is the market? Rose market in the world is 31% comes from East Africa, right? So we got all. So with all the education, the knowledge and everything, we had to really, it came to the standstill. Now imagine the women who are not even can have access to that. All our medium and large enterprises are educated. If you go to our profile, all our women who are successful in medium and large businesses have a higher degree in education. Those who adapted to technology had finished university of some sort or another. So no, education is very important to that. Definitely, so we have to keep on training. Graduation, you cannot graduate from small to medium if there is no an additional knowledge that you are getting to coach you on how to graduate, how you don't use your profit and your capital when there is a social issue that is coming. It's a mindset. I'll come back to what Sarah was saying. The mindset is not only it's not general, but consistently women have been denied that access to knowledge. And I think that's where the fragility is coming from. I would like to share this also something with Charlene, that we on our platform, we work with big companies, okay? We have big companies that come to intentionally want to buy from women because our regulations is like 30% of all public procurement must go to women and youth, right? And some of the women were not able to fulfill those contracts because they just don't understand the content of the contract. A big oil company like Total or any other that coming and they need food every week for their employees, right? And they want to really come to our platform and say, we want women who can supply us. And most of them, the content, the 15 pages of those international companies that it's so heavy, they cannot, they need people from the network to be able to help them fit. For those who dare, who knows, to come to the network, we help them with the contracts. We need to train in so many levels to catch up of what has been denied in women in businesses. And of course, I talk for the in food production. I think Clara will agree with me that in agriculture, that's the biggest employer of when you come to rural Africa, when you talk about that. So we need to, I'm not saying that we need to train. We need to catch up and upgrade. And this is where it comes. We have buyers. This thing, we have buyers. I have examples I have a list of every people, supermarkets, Carrefour, everyone coming to us and asking, can you please get us, reliable source? Because as I said earlier, markets have its own rules, right? Even local markets have its own rules. Unless we train those women how to respect that. If they say on Wednesday, you have to bring 50, 100, 150 of onion, 150 kilo of this, and for well packaged, cleaned, with a certificate of standard, right? They have to know that, and they don't know that. And this is the reality that we face every day. So the EB, for many, we still have another decade that we really have to empower. And fortunately, there are a lot of young people coming into the agriculture sector. But Clara and everyone else will agree that as we speak now, still our agriculture is illiterate in many ways.
Okay, Beatrice, thank you very much. I just, we are really running out of time, but let me turn to Sarah for the literally last 1 minute. If you could really share with us your thoughts about how to support resilience among women entrepreneurs.
I think that we should take inspiration from the SDGs and really try to implement the SDGs at every level, starting from bringing education, that is the first step everywhere for every person around the world. And when we talk about reaching gender equality, I'm not just talking about teaching skills, I'm talking about having people tomorrow with the leading position in every society together with other citizens, other men, other people. But it's something that should start from childhood, something that starts really from the beginning. And we need to be trained to become all together a thriving society. And this is crucial. And for sure, starting from food and the food industry is the perfect starting point, because you are always connected to food. You are connected to food every time you choose a specific product and you choose to buy a product that has been grown by a woman or has been grown by a specific country, a specific farmer. You know the story, you know the biodiversity. Every time you buy something is a starting point to connect with culture, with history, with traditions, with everything that is related to our identity. So I invite everyone who's listening really to take care about what we are eating, because I work in food, but behind the food you're eating, take care of who's producing the food you are eating, because this is the most important thing, to be connected with our essential needs. And food is care. So it's a perfect place where actually women can really express their beauty, because food is care. With food, you can take care of the land, of the earth, and the entire society.
Thank you very much. And this is a very nice way to end our panel. I mean, we knew that 2 hours wouldn't be enough to cover, this subject and all this diversity. And I really want to thank all the panel members for being so accommodating, so generous in order to, sharing with us all their insights and knowledge on the topic. To our audience, I mean, we have to disappoint you because we really don't have time to address some of the questions. But in any case, I think there will be other opportunities. I mean, the conference is really ongoing, and I wish you really that you will come back to the conference following in the next session, and then come back tomorrow. And I really wish you a very fruitful exchange, although virtual. And I don't know. I think it's over to Beatrice to tell us what else we have to do. Thank you very much. And